Do you believe that your birth was just a coincidence in time? What if I told you that the exact moment you arrived in the world carries an invisible, profound, and unique message about who you are and who you are meant to become? Carl Jung, the master of the unconscious, would never believe that you were born by chance. For him, life has a hidden order where every event, including birth, is part of a great map of the soul. But the meaning of this may not be what you imagine. It's not just about your sign, the month, or the year. Jung was talking about something more subtle, an inner call that begins to vibrate at the very moment you take your first breath. In this video, we will explore fascinating revelations left by Carl Jung. You will understand how your birth can contain clues about your challenges, your mission, and even the silence you feel within yourself. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about yourself. Because maybe, the real meaning of your birth is still hidden where few dare to look, inside your soul. From an early age, we are taught that we are born simply because our parents decided to have children. They say it was love or a surprise, or perhaps a miscalculation. But Carl Jung invites us to look beyond this surface. For him, it was not just a biological decision. It was a choice of the soul. Have you ever stopped to think about why you were born precisely at this time? Why in this country, in this family, with this life story? It seems too obvious to think that all this happened by pure chance. But Jung said, the soul has reasons that the mind does not understand, but that it feels deeply. In the Jungian view, birth is not the starting point. It is the continuation of something that existed before. There is an inner trajectory that goes beyond flesh and blood, as if your soul was already in motion even before the body was ready to receive it. And this is why Jung did not see birth as a beginning, but as a manifestation, a concrete expression of an inner need. As if you had been called to be born at that very moment, for a reason that you could only begin to understand later. Imagine an underground river running silently underground. On the outside, no one sees him, but it is there, alive, flowing. When it finally finds a space, it emerges, becomes a source, gushes out. Such is the soul before birth. She runs silently until she finds the exact moment to show herself to the world. Jung believed that the date of his birth carries a kind of cosmic signature. It's not cheap mysticism, it's synchronicity, a phenomenon that he studied in depth. The idea that certain events are connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. In other words, the day you were born, with everything that surrounded you, climate, stars, context, family, was not a coincidence, but a correspondence. His soul responded to that moment as if to say, it is now. And because of that, you can't reduce yourself to what they said about you. Because often the world only sees the shell, the appearance, the mistakes, the CPF. But the soul? This one carries a silent story, marked by symbols, emotions, and desires that no one sees. Have you ever felt that something inside you seems to know more than your mind? As if a part of you is waiting for something you don't understand yet? This is what Jung was talking about when he mentioned the self, the center of the psyche, where the true I lives, far beyond the ego. And birth would be the door through which that self begins its conscious journey, even if it takes decades for you to hear its voice. Perhaps you are living a moment of doubt, confusion, inner silence. Maybe you're wondering, what am I doing here? And this question, as uncomfortable as it may seem, is the beginning of revelation. Jung said that birth is not a finish line, nor a starting line. It's a portal. And every portal needs to be crossed with courage. Because on the other side there is not a ready-made destination, but an invitation to build. The soul doesn't want you to just live. She wants you to become. Become what was already written inside you, not in books, but in symbols, dreams, intuitions that visit you without warning. When you open yourself up to this vision, the meaning of life changes. It ceases to be a sequence of obligations and becomes a sacred trail. You come to understand that being born at this exact moment in history, with these challenges, with these pains and joys, is part of a great calling. And that doesn't mean that everything will be easy or clear, but it means that nothing will be in vain. What happened to you was not a mistake. It was a movement. His birth was a silent agreement between his soul and time. And maybe you're just starting to remember it now. Many spend their lives trying to fit into the molds they received at birth. But Jung encourages us to look inward and ask, what did my soul want when it chose this path? This question changes everything. She has no ready answer, but she is the one who turns on the light. Because when you start asking yourself sincerely, life starts to answer you deeply. Nothing that formed you, not your family, not your name, not your scars, is random. Each part of you carries a piece of the puzzle that your soul wants to assemble. And here's the bottom line. You weren't born to be what is expected of you. You were born to remember who you are. Birth is only the first sign. The rest of life is a process of digging. Are you ready to get started? Have you ever had the strange feeling that certain moments in your life seemed planned, as if something bigger was behind it all? As if, even in the midst of chaos, there was an invisible order driving events? Carl Jung called this synchronicity, that kind of meaningful coincidence that makes you think, this can't just be chance. And he believed that birth is the first great sign of this hidden clock that regulates the cycles of the soul. The outside world measures time with clocks and calendars. But the inner world, that of the soul, has another logic. He is guided by symbols, archetypes, and experiences that arise at the right time, even if reason does not immediately understand. When you were born, it wasn't just a physical event. There was an intersection between two times, the chronological of the clock, and the kairos, the sacred time, the one in which the soul chooses to act. And his birth was one of those moments, a meeting point between the visible and the invisible. Jung believed that the human psyche is deeply connected to the rhythm of nature and the cosmos. Just as the tides follow the moon and the seasons follow the sun, the soul follows its own rhythm, and it chooses to come into the world when that rhythm finds a breach. Think of an orchestra. Each instrument comes in at the right time, even if you don't see the conductor. So it is with birth. It is as if the soul were waiting for its note in the compass of the universe. And when everything aligns, context, energy, family, mission, it comes in. Therefore, for Jung, the month of his birth matters. Not as a superficial horoscope, but as a symbol. Each month carries an emotional climate, a psychological atmosphere, an energy that influences the way the soul expresses itself in the world. January can symbolize beginnings and demands. July, emotional depth and introspection. December, wisdom and the end of cycles. These symbols don't determine who you are, but they do offer clues as to how you might recognize yourself. And this vision changes everything. Because instead of asking yourself, why am I like this? You start asking, what does the time of my birth want to teach me? Carl Jung did not believe in a fixed destination, but he said that we are born with an inner tendency, an impulse that wants to be fulfilled. Like a seed, which already has the entire tree inside it, but needs the right seasons to flourish. This tendency is what he called individuation, the soul's path to becoming what it really is. His birth was the first step on this path. Not an accident, but a silent nod that the time had come. And here's the point Jung wanted us to see clearly. Life doesn't happen against you. It happens to you. Even when it feels harsh, unfair, chaotic, it's still trying to get you back to itself. It is as if the soul has left a map within its heart. And every phase of your life, every encounter, loss, crisis, or ecstasy would be a reminder, you are on the way. Keep going. But this map only reveals itself when you start looking inside. And that's why many people spend years lost. They're stuck with the world's clock, but they've forgotten the soul's clock. How many times have you felt like you were late? That he should be more advanced in life, more fulfilled, clearer about everything? What if you were exactly where you need to be right now? What if that moment, with all your doubts, is just the right time for something inside you to awaken? Carl Jung said that there are no coincidences, only encounters with hidden meaning. So maybe you're reading or listening to this right now because something in you was ready to remember. The truth is that the soul does not run. She does not live in a hurry. It has its own time. And respecting that time is one of the deepest forms of self-love. The problem is that we've been taught to compare ourselves to others, to measure our life by success, by the body, by the goods. But the soul is not interested in that. She wants to become whole. And for that, it needs you to listen and trust. If you were born in a certain month, maybe it's not just a detail. Maybe it's a clue, a code, a specific vibration that is trying to remind you of what you came here to do. The world may not recognize this. It can pressure you to be productive, useful, normal. But the soul doesn't want you to fit in. She wants you to flourish. And flourishing is often a silent process, like a plant that grows at night, away from the eyes. You don't need to understand everything right now. You just need to feel. Feeling that there is something bigger in motion and that you are part of it. Carl Jung invites us to trust this invisible clock, to accept that there is a right time for everything, even to wake up. So if you feel like you haven't found your way yet, don't blame yourself. The soul is not late. She just waits for the exact moment. And maybe that moment be now. Have you ever wondered why you were born into the very family you were born into? Why these people, this structure, this environment? Some call it luck, others of karma. But Carl Jung offered a deeper insight. We don't just fall into a family, our soul chooses it for a reason. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. This choice does not always seem right. Many people feel out of place within their own homes. They feel that they don't belong, that they think differently, that they carry pain that no one there understands. Sometimes, the family feels more like a prison than a nest. But is this a mistake? Or a calling? In Jungian's view, the collective unconscious shapes more than we imagine. Each family is like an energy field, a system that carries patterns, traumas, silences, and secrets. When you are born into this field, you don't just inherit the DNA. You also inherit unspoken stories, unresolved emotions, old conflicts. And here comes the essential point. The soul does not choose comfort. She chooses what will awaken her. You may have been born into a difficult environment, with absent parents, with abuse, with neglect. But that doesn't mean your soul has made a mistake. That is to say, perhaps, it came precisely to break a cycle that had been repeating itself for generations. Jung talked a lot about the cracks of the psyche. They are wounds that open in childhood, but that carry the seed of transformation. He said, where there is a wound, there is also a possibility of healing. And it is curious how the deepest wounds are almost always linked to our origin. It is in the family that we learn or unlearn to love. It is there that we form our first image of the world, of the other, and of ourselves. And it is also there that we often move away from our essence, to survive, to be accepted, to please. But the soul does not forget. It holds the truth like an ancient perfume, waiting for the right moment to exhale. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation requires, sooner or later, a rupture with the family image. It is not about cutting ties with parents or siblings, but to understand that you are more than the role you were given. You are more than the obedient child, the rebel, the savior, the outcast. You're a soul on a journey, and family was just the first station. Therefore, many times, the pain of not belonging is a sign that you are ready to find yourself. And that takes courage. Because recognizing that your family may have been the source of your emptiness is not simple. But it can also be the beginning of your freedom. Jung talked about the shadow, everything we reject in ourselves, often because we learned it wasn't acceptable. And much of this shadow is built in childhood. When you were a child and were taught to hide your crying, to disguise your fear, to smile when you wanted to scream, then you began to withdraw from your soul. But the good news is that the soul does not abandon. She waits. She observes. She whispers until you're ready to hear her. And maybe you are now. Maybe you're starting to question everything that seemed absolute. Perhaps you are looking at parents with less judgment and more understanding. Perhaps you see that behind the rigidity there was fear. And behind the absence, there was pain. This look is not simple, but it heals. Carl Jung said that reconciliation with the origin is a sacred stage on the path of the soul. It's not about forgiving the unforgivable. It's about letting go of what was never yours. You don't have to repeat the patterns. You don't have to live with guilt. You don't have to fit into the frame that you were put in. You can break free. But first, you need to understand. His birth into his family was like a seed planted in a specific soil. Perhaps this soil was arid, hard, hostile. But even in the desert, flowers are born. And those who are born there resist more. They shine brighter. And they transform the place where they sprout. You're not alone. Many carry this invisible pain of not feeling loved as they needed to. But Carl Jung would say, the wound is the place through which the light enters. And perhaps, precisely because you have lived what you have lived, you have today a rare sensitivity, a deep listening, a compassion that only those who have suffered know. None of this was in vain. The family may have been the beginning of the labyrinth. But his soul always knew there was a way out. And that, as you crossed this path, even with tears, even with silence, you would discover a strength that no one could teach you. The strength of those who find themselves after having lost themselves. The strength of those who transform pain into consciousness. The strength of those who honor their origin, but choose a new destination. You may have been born into the wrong family in the eyes of the world. But maybe it was the right one, to the eyes of the soul. Since we were born, we have been given a name. Someone calls us for the first time, and from then on, that sound starts to represent us. It's as if we became what we were told we were. But is the name you received just a registration detail? Or is it, as Jung believed, even this is part of something much deeper? Carl Jung was not a mystic in the traditional sense, but he clearly understood that the soul speaks through symbols. And the name, at its core, is a powerful symbol. It carries meanings, stories, expectations, repetitions. Sometimes we are named after someone who has passed away. Other times because our parents wanted us to be different. But the most important thing is, the name inserts us into a plot that often begins even before our arrival. Jung would say that the name is the first armor we wear in the outside world. It is with him that we serve, with him that we are presented, with him that we identify ourselves in social roles. And over time, we began to merge with him. We believe that we are what they call us. But the soul, it goes beyond the name. She doesn't care about letters or surnames. She cares about purpose. So, a fundamental question arises. Has your soul chosen your name? Or did you choose the mission that this name represents? Many feel, throughout their lives, that they carry an invisible weight. This often happens because the name we receive is loaded with the desires of others, from parents, from society, from traditions. And we spent years trying to correspond to an idea that is not ours. But there is also another side. At times, the name seems to call to something. Some names stand out, shine, vibrate with a different energy. And this is not by chance. Carl Jung spoke of the need to listen to the archetypes that hide behind names and images. A name can carry the strength of a warrior, the sensitivity of an artist, the introspection of a sage. It can contain within itself not only sounds, but symbolic destinies. If you've ever felt like changing your name, or if you've never identified with it, Jung might say, listen to your soul. Because, for him, more important than the name was the call it awakens. The name may just be the starting point. True identity is built along the way. The soul is always trying to reveal itself. She uses what she has at her disposal, the body, the dreams, the encounters, the symbols, and also the name. But if you feel like something doesn't add up, don't be alarmed. Maybe it's because you're still in the process of finding your true inner sound, the one that only you can hear. There are people who, when they go through major internal transformations, change their name. They adopt nicknames, stage names, spiritual titles. And this, for Jung, was symbolic. It represented the birth of a new phase of the psyche. When you start to free yourself from the image you were expected to be, when you stop living to please and start living to be, it's as if a new you emerges. And this new being may need a new name, not necessarily on paper, but in meaning. It may be that your name is perfect for you. It may contain the exact sound that your soul has chosen. But even if it's not like that, you can re-signify it. He can find within him a symbol, a truth, a north. The question Jung would ask us would be, what is your name trying to reveal about your journey? Perhaps it contains the key to something ancestral. Maybe it connects you with a bigger mission. Maybe he's just a clue, and you, the enigma that needs to be lived. The soul is not bound by labels. It expands, transforms, reveals itself little by little. And throughout your life, you may discover that your true identity has never fit into a name, because it is infinite. But Jung knew everything around him, including his name, can be a clue, a symbolic way to take you to yourself. Your name can be a mirror, or it could be a mask. Only you can tell. But now, you may be ready to ask yourself, who am I behind what they call me? Imagine that from the moment you were born, there is something, or rather, someone, waiting for you to awaken. That someone is not an external entity. It's you. Or rather, it's the truest part of you. The one that was there at the moment when the soul crossed the veil of the invisible and entered the world. Carl Jung called this dimension the self, the center of the psyche, where the whole of which you are made lives. During life, we are educated to move away from this center. We learn to fulfill roles, follow rules, fit in. School shapes us, society pressures us, family limits us. And little by little, we lose ourselves. We become what they expect, what they command, what they applaud. But the self never disappears. He just silences himself, waiting. Carl Jung said that the great goal of life is not success, nor happiness. It is the reunion with the soul. And this reunion does not happen magically. It requires crossings, crises, moments of disorder. Because it is just when everything seems to fall apart that the soul begins to whisper louder. Maybe you're living it right now. The phase in which nothing makes sense. When plans don't flow, relationships break down, faith fluctuates. It may seem like the end, but Jung would say, it's the beginning. It's the call. Call for what? To wake up. To wake up from the trance of being what you are not. To wake up from the automatism of surviving, and to start living. Waking up to the fact that your life has never been ordinary, it has always been symbolic. In the Jungian view, everything in existence has meaning. Dreams, symptoms, losses, encounters. And birth is only the first symbol. What comes next is a path full of signs. But only those who awaken see it. Only those who stop running feel it. Only those who remain silent listen. Therefore, the process of individuation, the path of becoming who one is not an external pursuit. It is a return. I return to the essence, to his real name, to the ulterior motive of having come into the world. It is not an easy journey. Most give up halfway, frightened by their own mirror. But you've made it this far. He read, felt, thought. And this is already a sign that it is ready. Ready to accept that his birth was not the beginning of his life. It was the awakening of a mission. A mission that no one else can fulfill. Because only you have that body, that story, that soul. You don't have to change the world. You just need to stop running away from yourself. Because when you find yourself, something changes in the world. It is as if a forgotten piece has returned to its place in the puzzle of existence. And it all starts with the simple act of saying, yes, I'm here. And I'm ready to remember. Remember what your soul knew first of all. Remember what your silence has tried to say so many times. Remember that life isn't against you, it's trying to wake you up. Maybe you've spent years battling the same pains, repeating patterns, running after answers. But what if, instead of running, you stopped now and asked, what is my soul trying to show me? Jung said that the soul communicates through images, emotions, intuitions. She doesn't scream. She insinuates. And birth was his first whisper. You were born in a specific month, in a specific house, among specific people, with specific challenges. All this not to limit you, but to mold you. Like clay that resists fire before becoming ceramic. And now, after so much travel, maybe it's time to stop asking the why of things and start asking why. Why this pain? Why this meeting? Why this pause? The what for is the beginning of consciousness. It is he who transforms victims into creators. It is he who awakens the sleeping soul. You don't have to understand everything today. You don't even need to be sure of the way. You only need to remember one thing. The true meaning of your birth is not out. It's inside. And he reveals himself little by little with each step back to himself. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying the soul. But he knew that everyone needs to walk their own path to discover it. No one can do it for you, but many can walk by his side. This video, perhaps, was one of those companions. A mirror, a calling, a reminder. Because at the end of the day, your whole life is waiting for this. For you to wake up and remember who you have always been.